My Singing Monsters. The classic My Singing Monsters we all know were released on September 4th, 2012 for iOS. It was developed by Big Blue Bubble, a Canadian studio out of London, Ontario that had been making mobile games since 2004. Before MSM, they were best known for smaller titles like Burn the Rope and Thumpies. But My Singing Monsters was the one that changed everything. What made it so special wasn't just the cute character designs or the catchy tunes, it was the concept itself. Every monster you place on an island adds its own unique musical line to the song. The more monsters you breed and collect, the richer and more layered the island's music becomes. It's essentially a world-building game disguised as a music game, and that combination alone hooked millions of players instantly, with the game eventually hitting over 100 million downloads. And since its release, MSM has expanded massively through continuous updates, adding new islands, new monster types, special events, collabs, and entirely new mechanics. It came to Android in late 2012, PS Vita in 2014, and eventually Steam in 2021. And nowadays, it contains over 500 monsters to collect and breed across 36 different islands, and it's almost impossible to run out of content with all the different types of music you can create from scratch. Thumpies. Before My Singing Monsters became Big Blue Bubble's whole identity, they had another monster themed game that quietly laid the groundwork for everything that came after. Thumpies was released on February 17th, 2010, a rhythm-based mobile game where these fuzzy little creatures called Thumpies bounce around on drums, stumps, and mushrooms, and your job is to tap each drum at the exact moment a Thumpy lands on it, and nail enough beats and the Thumpies get electrified, doubling your score. Miss too many and the meter depletes. It's simple, satisfying, and genuinely fun. Each level builds up its song section by section, layering percussion until the full track comes together, and which looking back feels like a very obvious prototype for MSM's whole musical layering idea. The Thumpies characters themselves will later be included in My Singing Monsters as breedable monsters, which is a really cool bit of continuity. Unfortunately though, the game stopped working on iOS devices past iOS 10 and was eventually pulled from storefronts around 2023, but in 2024 got a full HD remake, but we'll talk about that later. Flinger Thing, released in 2011, the year before MSM, Flinger Thing is an arcade game on iOS, Android, and Adobe Flash, with Flash actually coming first as a prototype. You stretch and fling little creatures called things at bubbles, working through levels on a limited shot counter, 2 shots per level for the first 15, and then just 1 after that. Every 5 levels you hit a climbing section on glass platforms that don't cost shots and is packed with power-up extras, followed by an image level where the bubbles are arranged to form a picture. Starting at level 20, monsters spawn every 10 levels that you need to avoid. Hit 1 and it spews more bubbles you now have to clear. Stars collected throughout can be spent on new worlds, new things, or power-up boosts. There are 7 things total, each with their own personality, including Dongle with his uselessly dangling arms, and Shrub who craves water and sunlight, a name MSM fans might recognize since the Shrub monster in the main game is named and spelled identically. They also put the Thing character as Free Thing in the main game. Like Thumpies is another piece of universe Big Blue Bubble was quietly building before MSM ever existed. My Mammoth. My Mammoth was a free-to-play spin-off released by Big Blue Bubble for iOS, Android, and Amazon devices. It's pretty much a digital pet game in the style of classic virtual pet apps, but starring the Mammoth from My Singing Monsters. When you first open it, you hatch a mammoth from an egg by tapping it repeatedly, go through a short tutorial, and then you're basically set loose to interact with your new little monster. You can talk to him and he will repeat everything back to you in a funny monster voice, poke different parts of his body for different reactions, or shake your device to trigger a whole earthquake. Tapping the Mammoth button brings up a list of tricks he can perform, singing, dancing, and others that get unlocked as he levels up. Leveling up is done by feeding him treats which you buy with diamonds, starting with a cookie and eventually working your way up to pizza, pie, and cake as you hit higher levels. The max level is 15. There's also a mini game where you fling Thumpies at the Mammoth to rack up points, and occasionally a sight pop will appear and hitting it earns you a diamond. The game has 3 islands and even a real world mode where you can interact with the Mammoth using your device's camera. It's charming and fun for what it is, though it wasn't really adding anything new to the MSM universe. It was mostly just a fun bonus for fans of the main game and just a copycat of Talking Tom and all those type of games. The game is no longer supported and has since been removed. My Pom Pom. My Pom Pom was released alongside My Mammoth and is honestly pretty much the exact same game, but with Pom Pom instead of Mammoth, and some fun little personality tweaks to fit her cheerleader vibe. Touch her hand, she gets annoyed because apparently cheerleaders don't appreciate their hands being grabbed. The food is all themed to match her pink girly aesthetic too. A strawberry dipped in chocolate instead of bread, cotton candy instead of a donut, and a tuna sushi roll instead of a cake. which is a kind of funny substitution. The minigame is different as well. Instead of flinging Thumpies, you juggle pom-poms by tapping each side of the screen as they fly across your hands. You can juggle up to 5 at a time. If a pom-pom has a diamond symbol on it, catching it earns you a diamond. The background also swapped Plain Island's aesthetic for a water island setting, but instead of pink bows and cold Christmas lights and colored lanterns as things progress. Beyond those differences, it's pretty much identical to My Mammoth structure, including the 4-hourly spin the wheel for diamond prizes. Like My Mammoth, it's no longer supported and has since been removed from stores. Furcorn's Jelly Dreams. Furcorn's Jelly Dreams is probably the most obscure entry on this entire list. It was a match 3 puzzle spin-off that was soft launched exclusively in Canada and never made available anywhere else. The game starred a Furcorn dreaming about eggs from various islands, and your goal was to pass match 3 levels to hatch those eggs and collect new monsters. The twist compared to most match 3 games was that the jellies couldn't be swapped around like in Candy Crush. You had to pop or swipe them directly, which made it feel a little bit more unique. Big Blue Bubble officially discontinued it in favor of Jammer Splash, and it was removed from the Canadian App Store shortly after. The slightly ironic thing is that Jammer Splash, the game it was discontinued for, also ended up getting discontinued itself a few years later. My Singing Monsters, Dawn of Fire. Dawn of Fire is the prequel to the main game, set before the events of the original My Singing Monsters and its first game chronologically in the franchise's story. It was announced via Twitter and YouTube simultaneously on September 4th, 2015, exactly 3 years after the original, and rolled out across iOS, Android, and Amazon Kindle over the following months. As a prequel, it introduces younger versions of familiar monsters as well as an entirely new natural element, which was fire. This adds a whole new rosters of monsters to discover and breed, including baby versions of classics you recognize from the main game. The gameplay is still very much in the world builder tradition of MSM, but Dawn of Fire also adds crafting mechanics letting you produce items and send them off on missions. It's a more involved experience than the main game in some ways, giving the franchise a whole new layer of lore and a reason to care about the world beyond just the music. My Singing Monsters Coloring Book. This one is exactly what it sounds like, released on December 15, 2016 for iOS and shortly after Android. The coloring book app lets players color in their favorite monsters from the franchise using a digital coloring interface. It's a simple, relaxed little app that was clearly aimed at younger fans of the series. Big Blue Bubble officially announced the discontinuation of its online services on January 24, 2025, and so it was delisted from the Apple App Store, though players who had already downloaded it could still access content they had purchased. It was never going to be the most talked about game in the franchise, but it's a sweet piece of the MSM universe all the same. Jammer Splash. Jammer Splash was a block-popping puzzle spin-off to My Singing Monsters and the direct successor to Furcorn's Jelly Dreams, which we already talked about. It was soft-launched in the UK in May of 2016, and then officially released worldwide on Android and iOS in November of the same year. The game featured monsters from the MSM franchise and operated as Big Blue Bubble's attempt to crack the match 3 and puzzle game market, a space that was absolutely dominated at the time, but unfortunately Jammer Splash suffered the same fate as Furcorn's Jelly Dream, leading to it being fully discontinued sometime around 2018, and by somewhere between 2021 and 2022, it had been fully removed from app stores with its servers shut down, and the exact date is unknown. It's a bit of a sad story for a game that was meant to fix the problems of its predecessor, only to end up in the same place. My Singing Monsters Composer. My Singing Monsters Composer is a paid music creation app that takes the Composer Island idea from the main game and turns it into its own full standalone tool. For $4.99 on the App Store, Google Play, you get access to dozens of monsters from the MSM franchise, each with their own unique vocal, percussive, or instrumental sounds, and you can bind them freely to build your own original compositions. It also includes sounds for rare monsters that aren't available in the main game's Composer Island, plus a broader range of features for people who really wanted to get in the music making side of things. It's a niche product, but for fans who really love the musical aspect of the franchise, which honestly is probably most of them, it's genuinely a cool standalone creative tool. My Singing Monsters Playground. MSM Playground is the first ever console release for the MSM franchise, and it's a completely new, bold pivot in a fun direction. Released November 9th, 2021, it released on Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and Steam, and then November 11th for PlayStation 4, with backwards compatibility covering PS5, Xbox Series XS, and Nintendo Switch 2 as well. Playground is essentially Big Blue Bubble's take on Mario Party. You pick one of 7 playable monsters and compete in a variety of minigames against up to 3 other players, either locally or with AI opponents. The whole game is soaked in MSM style, full of familiar characters and references to the original game. The Nintendo Switch version even got a physical release through Sold Out, now known as Fireshine Games. It's a genuine departure from the mobile world builder formula, and whether it totally lands probably depends on how much of an MSM fan you are going in. But as the franchise's first ever console game, it's a big deal, and it's great to see MSM get that kind of treatment. My Singing Monsters Stumpies, and we come full circle. My Singing Monsters Stumpies is a full HD remake of the original 2010 Thumpies game. Released on March 6, 2024, the core gameplay is the same as the original. Tap the drums in time as the Stumpies bounce across them, fill the thumpometer, and don't lose the rhythm. But the remake brings it all up to modern visual standards and adds a grading system with the platinum stars for perfect playthroughs. It also adds 7 new Thumpies characters that weren't playable in the original, including Floot, Butter, and Reese's, who had previously only appeared as background characters in the 2010 game. There's a direct link to My Singing Monsters as well, meaning completionists in the main game have a reason to play it. The Thumpieverse, as people call it, is technically its own distinct universe from the monster world, but at this point, the two are so intertwined that it barely matters. And that was every single MSM game explained. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe.